English philosopher John Locke, explaining about the state of a human mind, said that a mind is tabula rasa or a blank slate at the time of birth. With time, we develop thinking according to experiences. What we learn, feel, understand, experience, process, and read become the foundation of our character. In the composite growth of a personality, formal education is the thing that plays the defining role in molding our minds. What the teachers teach and what we learn through books are the sources of our understanding. As before subscribing to any professional course, everyone goes through the elementary understanding of every subject. It becomes important that these courses remain neutral, unbiased, impartial, free from error, and most importantly, truthful to the facts. But when we look at our foundational education curriculums, it clearly reflects the shadow of partiality, biasness, and is derived from some preoccupied connotation of mind. National Council of Educational Research and Training, that is NCERT, the organization entrusted to develop policies and program, has somewhat deliberately tried to suppress crucial facts or has made syllabus to serve a particular agenda. This has resulted in corruption of young minds and development of wokeism in the nation. Hi and welcome to TFI Post. I'm your host Apurva. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the share button and press the bell icon to get all the latest updates. And if you're watching us on Facebook, do like, share and subscribe to the page. Let's begin with the video report. As far as history is considered, past policies and politics are played around the people in power. Similar things happened to India after independence. As the first Education Minister of India, Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad planned the education curriculum with a plan to secularize the nation. Meddling with history, corrupting facts, and manufacturing theories to supplement secularism became the norms for books. With the help of Islamo-leftist intellectuals, they developed a curriculum for the modern secular Republic of India. Through words, language, and favorable incidences, many invaders, barbarians, and religious ghazis were glorified. After learning from those books, generations after generations became corrupt and remained in the illusion of the secular history of India. This corruption by the Islamo-leftist members of NCERT is the reason behind growing wokeism in India. The foundation of wokeism was developed by breaking the cohesive force of Hindu civilization. From Megasthenes to Farhane and from Biruni to Amir Khusro, every foreign traveler has defined the unity of India from the Himalayas in the north to the Indian Ocean in the south. The people living on the other side of Sindhu River were called Hindus. A complete society living along the Himalayas and Indian Ocean was defined in one term. That's how the name Hindustan was given to the land associating all that people. But using subtle propaganda techniques, NCERT created a perception that India has been just a geographical region with no unity underpinning its existence. Quoting historical personalities out of context, cunningly portraying favorable historical events, and using the cultural differentiations, NCERT broke the emotional connection people had with the land. For example, Amir Khusro, speaking about the languages of Hind, said, and I quote, "As I was born in Hind, I may be allowed to say a word respecting its languages. There is at this time in every province a language peculiar to itself and not borrowed from any other Sindhi, Lahori, Kashmiri, the language of Dugar, Dhur, Samundar, Tilang, Gujarat, Malabar, Gaur, Bengal, Oudh, Delhi and its environs. These are all languages of Hind which from ancient times have been applied in every way to the common purposes of life. But there is another language more select than the others, which all the Brahmins use. Its name from of old is Sanskrit." But quoting Amir Khusro, NCERT in class 7th book of page number 10 has explained the same thing in a different manner to show that there was a varied differentiation. NCERT writes a different language in every region of this land: Sindhi, Lahori, Kashmiri, Dav Samudri in southern Karnataka, Telangani in Andhra Pradesh, Gujari, Malbari, Gauri, Avdi and Hindavi. Amir Khusro went on to explain that in contrast to these languages, there was Sanskrit, which did not belong to any region. It was an old language and common people do not know it, only the Brahmins do. Where Amir Khusro's words show the unity of Hind, NCERT manipulated those words to show that different languages mean different nationalities, ultimately breaking the geographical cohesion of India. It is done to indoctrinate the children into believing that India is an artificial construct created only recently. The attack on Sanskrit language is pervasive in all the NCERT history textbooks, but it is very subtle. In this attack, the NCERT authors have primarily employed the propaganda technique of association. Each and every time the council authors mention Sanskrit in the textbooks, it is associated with a negative concept like misogyny, colonialism, exploitation, and inequality. It is presented as a language of colonialists imposed on the natives and local languages. It is shown as an exclusivist language used by Brahmins for exploiting the natives. Every social disharmony has been attributed to Sanskrit. When any pupil reads about Sanskrit language, they develop a preoccupied notion that any content written in Sanskrit would always be negative. This impression created a generation which, rather than feeling proud of its rich ancient scriptures, started to doubt them. The other fraud done by NCERT was giving legitimacy to Aryan invasion theory. Manufactured by the British in the 18th century, the theory is the bedrock on which the antagonistic divisions in the Indian society are created and in which the divisive identity politics takes roots. This theory has been dumped even by most of its former vociferous supporters. But the NCERT authors inserted it in the textbooks and built several other historical narratives around it. The children are forced to assume and accept that an Aryan invasion took place at some point in our history. It is laughable and antagonizing that at one hand, these leftist historians define the Islamic invasion as an act of cultural assimilation. On the other hand, the same NCERT presents a manufactured invasion theory to create North-South divide in India. The contrasting portrayal of Indic kings and foreign rulers in Indian history is a stark example of the NCERT history writers' bias for anything Indian. Ignoring facts and the large corpus of authentic historical texts, these writers first omit most of the Indian kings from their pages. They then present them as warmongers, always busy destroying each other. Following this narrative, NCERT history writers then present the foreign invaders, primarily the Muslim, Turkic and Mughal regimes, as benevolent and just. Indian kingdoms spread over large areas and time period are reduced to a mere footnote, while smaller foreign kingdoms, sometimes even those limited to a city or single individual, are presented as empires. These writers club several foreign rulers whose rule individually lasted for an average of 10 to 20 years into one sultanate period. For example, in the class 7th history book on page number 7, the NCERT explaining about Mughals writes, the Mughals were descendants of two great lineage of rulers. From their mother's side, they were descendants of Genghis Khan, who died in 1227, ruler of Mongol tribes China and Asia. From their father's side, they were successors of Taimur, who died in 1404, the ruler of Iran, Iraq and modern-day Turkey. They were proud of their Timurid ancestry, not least of all because their great ancestors had captured Delhi in 1398. But Taimur, in his own words explaining the expedition against Kafir, wrote, about the year 800 AH, that is 1398 CE, there arose in my heart the desire to lead an expedition against the infidels and to become a champion of the faith. For it had reached my ears that the slayer of the infidels is a champion, and if he is slain, he becomes a martyr. It was for this reason that I formed my resolution, but I was undetermined in my mind whether I should direct my expedition against the infidels of China or against the infidels and polytheists of India. In this matter, I sought an omen from the Quran, and the verse to which I opened was this: O Prophet, make war upon the infidels and unbelievers and treat them with severity. Where Timur himself declares that he is a Ghazi and is fighting a religious war, NCERT declares him a great ancestor of the Mughals. There are multiple such incidents where NCERT has overglorified invaders and barbarians. Class 7th History book of NCERT has completely been devoted to the Islamic glorification. Their distortion of Indian culture has been termed as an act of cultural assimilation. Leave the question of giving any substantiative place to the time kingdoms like the Vijayanagar, Chola, Cheras, Pandyas, Chalukyas, among others. They have heavily criticized their rule by giving selective facts. Indic traditions celebrate a supreme power, that is Ardhanarishwar, and the same cosmology permeates the world relations. Ardhangiri captures the essence of Indic view about women. This tradition envisages men and women as complementary and not competitors. This approach can offer a pragmatic alternative to the current confrontational discourse on feminism. Yet the NCERT authors portray Indic traditions to be misogynist. Selectively quoting Manusmriti, they have tried to completely whitewash the Indian tradition of female worship. The message to the children is very clear and is repeated again and again. India comprises several antagonistic social groups classified in terms of tribes, castes, races, and classes. All these different social groups have always been at war with each other. In doing so, NCERT history writers reverse the actual historical narrative, where the local social groups have always come together to defeat the foreign imperialistic powers. The contribution of different social groups in standing up to aggressive and exclusivist foreign cultures is totally ignored by them. For example, NCERT in class 7th, page 91 writes, there were, however, other kinds of societies as well. Many societies in the subcontinent did not follow the social rules and rituals prescribed by the Brahmins, nor were they divided into numerous unequal classes. Such societies are often called tribes. Sometimes they clashed with the more powerful caste-based societies. But the caste-based and tribal societies also depended on each other for their diverse needs. In a way, NCERT cleverly projected tribes as non-Hindu societies. This is a direct confrontation with the fact that tribes in India follow much more strong and stringent culture than anyone. Moreover, not a single incident about tribal versus Hindu fight has been reported in history. The 19th century tribal uprising was the result of the British socio-economic policy. So, to say the tribals were having clashes with the so-called caste-based societies is a blunt lie, nothing else. It is an attempt to create a fault line in the Indian society. The NCERT history writers even attack Indic scriptures and literatures like Ved, Mahabharata, and Ramayana. The two epics Ramayana and Mahabharata are trivialized, their message ridiculed, and their authenticity rebuffed. But the severest NCERT attack is on the Vedic corpus. It is presented as an imperialistic tool in the hands of Brahmins to demean and disenfranchise the native population. NCERT's malicious reductionism and misrepresentations of the native values, sacred literature, and cultural ethos destroy the essence of Indic civilization. Children are presented with a caricature of their ancient culture and value system. All the virtues of the Indic civilization are transplanted as invaders' attributes. The viciousness and exploitative nature of foreign rulers and their creeds they subscribe to are passed off as innate depravity of Indic culture. For instance, slavery, which is institutionalized in Abrahamic religions, is presented as an intrinsic trait of ancient India. For example, in class 7th history book on page number 38 explaining about the kidnapping of Hindu women by Delhi Sultanate rulers for their harem, NCERT writes, the Khiljis and Tughlaqs continued to use bandagan and also raise people to humble birth. The patronage of these humble people by Delhi Sultans also shocked many elites, and the authors of Persian Tawahiri criticized the Delhi Sultans for appointing the low and base born to high offices. Explaining Delhi Sultanate rulers, Moroccan travelers Ibn Battuta writes, on the celebration of Eid, first of all the daughters of Kafir, that is Hindu kings who have been captured during that year during raids are produced, who sing and dance for the audience. Thereafter, they are gifted to the chief foreigners and amirs. After this, the daughters of other Kafirs come and dance. When they are through with their singing and dancing, the Sultan gifts them to his brothers, relatives, sons of Maliks, etc. The Sultan conducts this darbar after the namaz. Then next day the darbar commences in the same manner. Captured girls are brought for singing. After their singing and dancing, the Sultan presents them to his chief slaves. There are multiple such stories. They are sufficient to show that these Islamic invaders were nothing but religious barbarians who ruled in the realm of Hindu hate. Despite such factual rebuttal, Islamo-leftist historians have deliberately presented them as secular, just and fair rulers who came to India for the cultural assimilations. These distorted presentations of history distorted generations after generations. They were not only denied the truth, but the whole Hindu civilization was also endangered by concealing the real facts. It is a universal fact that history teaches us to not make the same mistakes in future. Concealing them was an act of sedition. It is the composite sin of Islamo-leftist historians that has developed wokeism in youngsters of the nation. Reading books that are biased, partial and full of lies, the youngsters have started to target their own culture and nation. This misdeed must be corrected, and these so-called intellectuals should be countered with facts and reasons.